There's a grand massacre in the small and strange town of Derry. While most adults see an unfortunate accident, these kids, who end up dead or missing, bear witness to the dark truth hidden beneath Derry. The dark truth being the entity that's plagued the earth for many years and taken many souls, leaving any survivors with the strange effect of not remembering or at times even seeing the entity's presence or effects it has on its unfortunate victims. That is until one group of losers band together, set aside their fears, and took the entity down, seemingly. But what of the stories of the previous victims of Pennywise who weren't able to accomplish such a feat? The ones who never gave Pennywise any sense of fear. The ones whose story was wrapped up in that being an accident or just something that happens as a common occurrence in this strange small town. The missing children that history never seems to think about. Well, it looks like in the new Welcome to Derry TV show, we're going to be finding out exactly what went down with one of Pennywise's more famous incidents in the massacre on the Black Spot. But given what the trailer's given us glimpses of, it seems there's a lot more to the story than what's written down in the history books. So what was Pennywise's involvement in this horrific incident based on racial tension? Well, I'm hoping by the end of the video, we'll be able to put some of those plot points together. Let's go ahead and start with some very similar themes we get from the movies. That being us watching another group of kids putting together the pieces of Pennywise's existence and getting tormented by the being. Now, some online seem to be upset that there's a group of kids we're following at all. Some claiming that it's a cheap way to sort of recreate the same elements from the movies due to lack of a consistent story they could tell. But in my personal opinion, it would have been a crime to tell the story of the Black Spot without including any group of kids whatsoever. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, thematically, most audiences, that's not the super fans or the people who've read several Stephen King books, will be watching or tuning into Welcome to Derry for the similar vibes it did have to the actual movies. Imagine if Alien Earth didn't resemble any of the previous movies or aesthetics established. Or if Cyberpunk Edge Runners took place in a completely different period of time and had nothing to do with sci-fi tech whatsoever. Point is, if this series is going to span multiple seasons, the first season has to be the one that hooks everybody in. And while their target demographic are fans of the books, they're also fans of the films. But let's establish more of the narrative importance of the new group of kids that will be investigating Pennywise. That and developing William's story. See, William Hanlon was Mike Hanlon's father, and his story is heavily tied to the events that took place on the Black Spot, especially considering the established future fate of William in burning in front of his son. I theorize that the Black Spot burning down may be similar to the scene that takes place when Mike lost his parents / William himself. Or the series will end with a jump to the future and finally finding out the fate of one of its key characters in William. Perhaps Pennywise returning in some way, possessing maybe even Mike, and leading him to cause the accident that killed his parents. There's still no solid clarification on Mike's full involvement within his house burning down, especially considering the glimpse we see in Chapter 2. See, an important thing to note is within the books, Will ended up growing old and telling Mike the story of the Black Spot in his hospital bed. But the movie adaptation decided to take a more brutal approach to William's fate, and I believe this was specifically in the hopes of creating spin-off stories like this. And it would help with the world building of the series as a whole, to connect it so heavily within the movie's lore. But let's get into more reasons about why introducing another group of kids is kind of important. The Losers Club felt almost invincible and was the one group of people who made Pennywise not seem like as much of a threat as he really could be. See, in my opinion, the first movie was really terrifying because you didn't really know who was going to make it out or how unless you read the books. But when Chapter 2 came along, Pennywise was less of a threat and just someone who seemed very spited and wanted revenge, even killing some kids who weren't even afraid of him. My hopes for the series is that by the end we'll have very few survivors of these group of kids, and they'll either move far away from Derry, be sent to a mental asylum, or stayed in Derry and just happened to forget all the traumatic events that went down. Either way, I'll be very surprised if the season ends with the entire group of kids making it through, as we know they're not going to beat Pennywise, let alone even cause him to worry. Thematically speaking, it would be much more rewarding to have the kids actually go missing or get killed off than to have them investigate for a whole season and then just simply give up without any repercussions. Again, while these do seem like a group of losers, they aren't the Losers Club. I'm hoping for a moment where they have the opportunity to band together and simply are too afraid to do so, as most normal people absolutely would be. This coupled with the fact that the kids aren't protected by Maturin, the turtle entity that is the one thing Pennywise really hates. This turtle represented a lot of symbolism and small moments within the other two It films, as well as many themes within the books. That, coupled with the fact that it's been rumored the series' goal is to go backwards in time every single season, means we're likely not to see these kids again, and also leaves them likely without any plot armor. But I also don't think they're going to be the main focus of the story. I think a big chunk of the story, maybe even the primary plot, will be that of a similar storyline to the movie Sinners, if anyone has seen it, in the burning down of the Black Spot. But what is the burning of the Black Spot? Well, essentially, Mark's grandfather Leroy was a part of a military company known as Company E. This consisted of 27 African American soldiers, who were moved down to the airfield barracks near Derry and were heavily discriminated against by all sorts of unkindly folk. Eventually, with tension being built at the bars established in Derry, they were forced to relocate and open up another spot. They had no choice but to relocate and open up a club in a different area. This later came to be known as the Black Spot, and Company E, amongst other folks, ended up doing everything they can to making it the best club they could. And they were successful. It ended up popping in town and getting a lot of attention. Unfortunately, this included the attention of Derry's prominent bigots and psychos. History tells us that a group of Klan members representing themselves as the Legion of White Decency had gone to the Black Spot, locked everyone inside, and burnt the place to the ground, with many dying and very few making it out. But who are some of the characters we'll be following in this adult plotline going on in the show? Well, as mentioned earlier, we'll be following Mike's grandfather in Leroy Hanlon, played by Giovanni Depo, popular for his three-body problem role, or as I personally know him, his role from the old movie Overlord. Seems he's with the company when they go to Derry, but rather than staying at the barracks, he's renting a place out in town, hoping to show his wife Charlotte Hanlon a piece of normalcy, and his son William Hanlon, Mike's father. There's also Richard Halloran, should be a cook within the company, but potentially just another soldier who happens to be living on the barracks, and based off the trailer, seems to be haunted by Pennywise the most. And for anyone wondering why Pennywise would be messing with adults this time around, well, again, he's very interested in fear, and soldiers with severe PTSD, living in a place where they feel unsafe and are constantly discriminated against, are probably a prime target for him. This, coupled with the fact that it looks like we get a glimpse of Halloran and the rest of the company digging up some spots around Pennywise's lair. This likely could lead Halloran to his first encounter with Pennywise. So while struggling to adjust to a life in Derry and still being accompanied to a military squadron, you can only imagine the build-up to the inevitable burning of the Black Spot, one of the few massacres or events in Derry that clue people in to Pennywise's existence. But what exactly went down with the burning of the Black Spot? Well, essentially, the Legion ended up locking everyone inside. The music was way too loud and everyone was having way too much fun to notice that everything started to burn around them. And eventually, only a few were able to escape initially with the help of Richard Halloran, who essentially ended up getting Leroy out of the building amongst some others, and then taking a vehicle to break through a wall and save many more. But unfortunately, many were still trapped inside and ended up consumed by the flames. It's said that during the fire, William ended up seeing a giant bird. But we also see a glimpse in the trailer of what I believe could be William potentially being saved by Pennywise during the burning of the Black Spot, which seems a little weird and doesn't make a lot of sense. Or again, the more likely candidate being a flash forward to the future in seeing William as an adult and the moments that led to him and his wife burning while Mike watched, all taking place a few years before the events of It Chapter 1. This would accomplish directly segueing the end of Welcome to Derry and tethering it to the beginning of It Chapter 1. But what about Richard Halloran, the one who saved so many people and is likely to be haunted by Pennywise for most of the story? Well, if they're going to continue the narrative of the books, it's likely he'll keep his cooking position and potentially take it to a newer establishment. This being that of a very prominent hotel in the mountains known as the Overlook, otherwise known as the same hotel from The Shining. But there also seems to be another storyline added within the series, that being the story of the natives. See, there's a glimpse in the trailer where we see Pennywise land in his famous home lair, one day to become the town of Derry. I theorize that throughout the story, the natives will quickly start to put together Pennywise's return and potentially get involved and try to help. This could result in why the natives ended up moving out of Derry as referred to by Mike in Chapter 2, likely for their own safety. The pieces of the trailer I can't quite figure out myself are two different shots. One being the group of kids getting caught in Pennywise's deadlights, seemingly in a normal building, potentially a high school gym, which seems a little intense that Pennywise would go after this many kids at once and actually successfully nab them all, and would bring further into question his abilities during his fight with the Losers Club. But there's also another sequence where we see a huge wall of mist engulf the town of Derry. Now, while you could potentially think that this is the smoke accumulated from the burning of the black spot, I just don't necessarily see that as being the case, though potentially with Pennywise's ability to make people forget and see things differently, maybe this whole mist rolling in will just be jumbled up as a part of the massacre that went down. But either way, those are some of my theories on where Welcome to Derry will actually go. Fans of the channel know I cover a lot of different stuff, most recently being a lot of sci-fi. But if you've seen some of my older videos, I also like things like animation and horror, with Yellow Jackets and the series From being some of the future coverage I'll be doing on the channel. But it's looking like for our next few bits of horror here, I'm going to be covering both Marvel Zombies, if it's any good, and Welcome to Derry. Either way, I want to know what you guys think. How will the massacre go down in Welcome to Derry? If the show's successful, where could you see them taking on the next season? And which of Pennywise's massacres are you most excited to see on screen? Either way, thank you all for watching, appreciate the support, and remember to stay out of the sewers.